which is going to be the flow chart. So the flow chart is going to be your assignment for, or your ILA assignment for next class. Let me open up Perforce. So from here on out, the remainder of your assignments can be found on Perforce. So you can either love this or hate this, but when you're done with this course, and this was actually from a student last month, and this was a very wise way to look at it, was you're not going to be using FSO in the industry, right? You're going to be using Perforce. You're going to be using software like this, and that's why I have it on here for you guys, is so it's easy to access and also going to be just getting familiar with the interface and getting files from here. So the IND content folder is basically where you're going to find the rest of the assignments besides the ILAs. Those ones, the short little description is in FSO itself. So here's the flowchart right here, level flowchart experiment. I'll rename that to match exactly what it says in FSO. So this assignment, what we're going to be doing here, because I'm sure you guys have had plenty of GD1 flowcharting, right? You guys have done a lot of flowcharting in there. You know, rest your soul, Michael Lucas. But you guys didn't hear about that? He passed away. He just had a heart condition, basically we think it was a stroke, but heart failure. Great guy, everything. So the principles that you guys have from GD1, there's going to be some of that going on here. It's a little bit different. This is more about your mechanics. So remember on your LDD, we talked about IPM. We're not just going to give the player our hardest setup right at first. We're going to slowly build them up to, introduce, practice, and master our mechanics. We want to start to lay that out in the flowchart itself. So this presentation right here, just a short 10-minute video that Mr. Gazaway has created, basically just explaining how to use Google Draw. If you're not familiar with Google Draw or these types of tools, which are very familiar to like even Paint or Photoshop, very common tools you'll see, but it's a simple form, very easy to use. So here's a short little 10-minute video if you want to just get familiar with how to use Google Draw and some of the functionality in it. Here's a template that you'll be using for the assignment. Again, just instructions how to work through this, pretty straightforward. But what's important to know about this flowchart is that it's not just work that's going to be tossed away and then never used again. By putting the effort and time into your flowchart, it's going to make making your map that much easier and much easier for you to communicate your ideas on paper, and then in turn make it easier for others to interpret your ideas. So let me go down, and because the template is basically just a blank document, and again, just go File, make a copy to make a copy of this. So this is the one I want to see for the flowchart. Notice that these icons up here, nothing fancy or flashy, but some of these are resemblant of what you've done in your previous flowcharting, but these are more, the interactive area are more unique to what we're doing in a level design sense. So going down to my example, this is just one that I had created, and this is basically where I was after about an hour and a half or so doing this while I was working on other things and talking with students. I basically gave myself a 2-hour block to do as much as I could, and this was kind of brainstorming with another instructor. So I was doing other things at the time, but I got my ideas down, and this is where I ended up. I can show you a few other student examples, and those are very well done. You'll notice I say in here, this is basically a partially completed, because you could make this polished up and part of your portfolio piece. Really what's going to help you guys land jobs, and if anyone's considering stopping at the associate's point, I highly recommend going through the whole thing. But if you're ending with the associates, you're going to end with a project that shows you've worked in a team and you've taken something from concept fully all the way through implementation and actually ended up with a product. And showing that process, going into interview and saying, this was my LDD, just here's a short, quick second of it. Here's my LDD. This is the flow chart I made. Here's the map I ended up with. Spend a little bit of time talking about your map. And now here's the level I made with as a team. Employees want to see that. So whether you're stopping at associates or bachelor's level or going on even further, showing that process of this is where I started and I finished this thing. I actually made it all the way to the end and completed it. that's going to be enticing to seeing that you can finish projects and documenting your process along the way. So in here, what's important to note is that this has nothing to do with the actual layout of the map, right? Like visually, this could look any way I want it to right now. This is all about my mechanics and getting them set up from area to area. So you'll notice through here that I have certain little helpful little tips that are going to help me to actually build this and communicate my ideas. So notice that I have my collectibles and my mechanics listed out here in terms of IPM and introduce, practice, and master. And then throughout here, basically in each interactive area, all I care about are what are the setups in that area. What is the player doing in that little space? So this could be a room. This could be part of a larger space. This could be a floor of a building. This could be an outdoor area. This has no physical boundaries right now. All this is a box with setups that the player is going to be performing. And what's really nice about this is, again, you get that opportunity to design and change out your layout and adjust things before you get into the map. So I can very easily say to myself, what if my control room was after, this happens every month, what if my control room was after the generator room, right? What would that level play like? Is there any merit to thinking about what would that be, what would that change in the level itself? So my level was all about coming up to, the player starts in this closet and they find out their information about what their goal is, and they need to find this stolen vehicle, or they need to steal a vehicle that's in this top floor of the showroom. That was what I was going for. So they start at the bottom of the building and work their way up. But maybe I want to readjust at this point. I want to readjust, and what if they start in the top floor showroom? They see the car, but then they crash through a hole in the wall and start at the bottom and then work their way back to the top. I have that opportunity to start to just take some of these boxes by grouping your icons in the text box itself and just moving them around. Like start to play with this layout and adjust everything. This is when it's going to be easy to make changes. When you get to your map and you're actually laying out icons and actually working on the layout, if you decide to make a big change later on, it's going to cause a lot of work to be thrown out and basically started fresh again. So you want to take the time to get your layout down here and not worry about the visuals at all. Just where does the player learn the first mechanic? Where do they get that collectible that helps them with the second mechanic? Things like that. So another good thing to list out here is like your featured asset and the parts tied into it, or basically your progress markers. You'll notice on the flowchart assignment, we only have you describe 5 collectibles. Where is it? Right here. So collectible items, at least 5 items in the level. So yes, you see down here in bold that you do have to have 15 collectibles on your map. The only reason I have 5 in your flowchart is basically these are your best 5. These are the either ones tied to player progression or tied to your featured asset. If you had to have just 5 and you wanted to showcase these 5 off as your best or most creative or most unique ones or most interactive to obtain, put those in your flowchart, and then you'll be including more in the map itself. Another thing to notice is that you'll see on here, each interactive area, I have at least 1 image. Some of them have 2 tied to them. That is very much indicative of what you guys just did for the visuals and setting, right? Like I found these images, so when I go to actually build this control room or this space, this is the starting point in my head, right? If I just go to Google and type in control room, let's see what comes up, because you can get all different kinds of these are more sci-fi or high-tech things like that, but you can get a lot of different results based on stuff like this. So find some images that are tied into what you're visualizing for that space. So when you go to build this in Unity, you have that reference to go back to. So a lot of these assignments are built upon each other, right? So we use the brainstorming to build the LDD, we use the LDD to make the flowchart to the map, And it really shouldn't be that you're redoing work over and over again, right? You can link, you're supposed to, and most people don't, but please take the time to do it. And it's more important on the map that you can link your LDD right here, right on this document. And then what you can do is basically you have those setups you wrote for your minor setups and your major setups for your mechanics. Copy and paste those from your LDD onto your flowchart. Start to fill in all this information. You'll notice this player choice here, and I was just doing this, just showcasing this just to use it in some way. But one thing to pay attention to in this location is that it's a very quick and short difference between the two. And I didn't want to make it something that the player is going to miss a large amount of content if they choose one way or the other. Really the only difference is there's a hidden collectible, and they go this way, they can get a collectible and a health kit. So slightly more challenging to make some platforming, but either way they end up to that top floor showroom. I wanted to make it that no matter which way they took, they ended up on the same place, and it's still overall a linear experience. So I highly recommend sticking to things like that. Don't have big branches and multiple endings. Remember that you're connecting this to another area, and that is definitely more important for the map itself. So again, just remember that this isn't tied to your player flow or your player path at all. Very common thing we see is, because my example is right here, basically left to right, we see a lot of flowcharts that end up left to right, and then the maps just end up, the player starts here. It's almost like they just take the boxes away and keep that player icon and just start to put in a path and just visual objects here, and they end up left to right. Well, that doesn't mean this flowchart doesn't represent that at all, right? Because in my level, this is actually a multi-tiered building that they're scaling up, right? They start at the bottom floor and end up at the top floor and then smash out the window and fall to the ground, or get caught by a helicopter. So there's a lot of verticality to my level, and that isn't showcased in the flowchart itself, but it's important to separate the two from each other. So does everybody understand the purpose of the flowchart and what you should be focusing on for this portion? Any questions? No? Alrighty, so it's the mechanics. So the mechanics is what you want to be focusing on for this. So a lot of what you've been doing in the LDD, you'll translate right over to here. And again, this should only take you, that 2 hours, that ILA time that you've been given, that's the amount of time you should be spending on this. So you really want to just get your ideas down, get them organized, and then start to change the layout, right? As I was moving those around in such a terrible fashion, you can just take this and then all these icons that you put in here and group them together. I think it's group, arrange. So you can select multiple objects and then group them and just start to move them around. And when you use these little connectors, these arrows will stay with you with your icons. So that's a nice feature as well. But really just another opportunity to go into that open mode, right? Remember John Cleese, the close and open mode? Another opportunity here to go into that open mode and explore. So the more time you spend on this, the more creative your level will be and the more effort will be coming forward. But this shouldn't be a whole day spent on something like this. All right, let me show you an example real quick before I go on, because once I saw the students, and this is an on-campus student, I felt very ashamed of mine. I was like, wow, that's really good. Where is it? Week 2. So this is a very, very visual student, very much interested in the arts and the visual side of games, and it shows in his work. His level ended up being very visually stimulating, but had some issues with the design and the mechanics. But you can tell with his work, very much a visual guy. So this was his flow chart, and one thing to note here is these are all just little bubbles, right? Like all these are all his little interactive areas. And notice how these are in a very free-form mode right now, right? You could very easily mix and match these wherever you want to and adjust the layout as best you can. So what I really, really liked what he did in his map And a lot of, or in his flow chart and translated to his map, was started to break down the text. So there's a lot of different ways to do things like this, and I'll give you a bunch of examples, and you'll see a bunch of examples on the maps. But I find this way is one of the best, to just start to break it out in chunks like this. Because when you give people, and just other people, don't think about this as just you're turning in a map for a grade. Think about it as you're building something for other people to read and interpret, right? So if it's not enjoyable to look at, it's not going to be enjoyable to actually decipher what's going on. But this is short chunks of text, right? Because ideally we don't want to be reading as much. We want to be able to just look at the images, look at the map, and that explain as much as possible, and the notes are just there as backup in more detail. So what's really nice about this is it's broken up into small chunks about, oh, I want to know more about the abandoned road and gas station. Oh, it's right here. Look at this section. And I can go from point to point here, and if I have anything in question, I just come down to the text, and it's very easy to find, right? It's not like I need, valve control. Go find note 30, and there's a big long list, and I go find note 30. It'll happen, and it's common. Not a bad thing, but you can put more effort into it to make it easier to interpret. And this right here, this to me is, I would show this off like I was talking about in an interview or something. Like, I made this LDD. Here's the flow chart. Here's my map. Here's the level. Like, you want to get through the intermediate stuff to show the level, but you still want to talk about the process, and these are the design decision I was given. We got this character, he got this Gravenol thing, it was kind of shitty. This is what I made with it, and start to explain your thought process in those interviews. So really, really good example flowchart here that just showcases that it's not about the visual layout, right? You could start to mix and match these. All these bubbles look the same, but here's the images about what you're going to be going for. So you can start to visualize, okay, the player's going to start at this gas station. They move their way into this tunnel. And he had this little vehicle that was like a gas and water truck that you could, basically drove along with you. You'd stop at little checkpoints, and you'd use the gas and water to solve puzzles. So you could very easily start to put together what this level is going to be like in the map itself. Another thing to pay attention to is the times on each one of these. Definitely a really good opportunity now to start to think about just this interactive area. Think to yourself, okay, how long do I want the player to spend in here? And don't think about, okay, well, if they die and if they respawn, or if they're dirtling around, or if they collect all the objects or all the collectibles. Think about an ideal player. If they're playing through the game as you want them to, how long should it take to get through? And just do your best to estimate each one of these. When we bring the map itself into Unity next week, you'll get a much better, clear indication. But just give you your estimate. And remember, you want to stick to that 2 to 4 minute mark. If you're adding your stuff up and you're averaging about a minute per place, or you've got eight of them and they're all about a minute or so, or 5 or 50 seconds, that might be too much time, right? You want to be building something that's within scope of, one, your own ability, because you're going to be making this in the next few months, as well as just with the time we have available to us, right? 1 month of design, 2 months of production. Alrighty, so what I'm going to take his flowchart, and I'm actually going to throw it in here as well. And I'll change this in a minute. All right, there's the other example if you want to look at his flowchart. I'll write a sentence in after lecture. So after you're done with the flowchart, the next step in the process is the map itself, right? This is the meat and potatoes of the course. So besides all the technical assignments for the course itself, the map is the big weight. You'll notice that if you don't do your map rough in your map final, you will end the class with a 69.0, and that won't get you into the next month, right? It's designed that way because this is what you're going to be going forward. Yes, all the other assignments are important because those are the skills you need to actually build it in Unity, right, and prepare you for level design, what you're going to be getting yourself into. So make sure that you're not skimping on the map itself. So a lot of the same material in here, right? Here's that same video that we saw from the flow chart. If you want to review that, the common mistakes, which we've seen already in the LDD, I'll talk about a few of those today as well. Here's the map template, which is basically the same thing, but a few differences. And definitely pay attention to this. And I don't want to see people with the flow chart template for your map itself, because not only it's not just about the icons, but this text box down here is usually missing from people that copy that because they don't ever catch that this is over here. But this is the template given to you. I guess I could talk a little bit about the icons now. So obviously the legend here has been built. Myself and one other instructor built these icons from Photoshop, as well as gathered some from a really amazing website. But these are going to be available to you. Do not scale any of these icons. Keep them the scale that they're at. And that's important. You'll notice here for the car, it says do not scale. It doesn't mean that it's optional to not scale it. It means it's optional to use the car if you want it or not, right? So just the reason we're not having you scale them is because you'll notice that these are basically the size equivalent of each other, right? So the reason is when we keep these to scale and then we bring this into Unity, we can scale up our player's collision to fit right inside of that player start icon, and everything will be built to a good scale moving forward. So it's important that you don't scale this down, because then obviously, I want to make my character smaller, or things like that. Now I got to scale my level down. Now everything else in my level is going to be massive. Or when you go and connect it to a teammate's area, yours is going to feel accurate. Someone else's may feel too big. Someone else's may feel too small. And it's all going to come from the map. I've seen so many maps that just look great and look ready to go into level design. I'm interested in seeing how you guys are doing, and then I see the level in level design. I'm just like, oh, it's just so empty, and you could tell it was just a scale problem, right? Everything was scaled up too big, and the student didn't take the time to stop himself before continue working, right? He just kept going with it. So it starts here. Don't make any of those big errors just yet, or at all. So yeah, basically a lot of these are self-explanatory. The more information you put on here and the more you explain, the better off you'll be. You'll see here this barrier and solution. This doesn't necessarily mean a lock and key, right? Like here's the locked door, here's the key, I go find it. All that's representing is basically this is the obstacle in the way of the player. This is the item that you have to go get, or the thing you need to solve. This is the solution to getting through this other area. So if you want to customize this or make modifications to it, feel free. So this website, gameicons.net, game-icons.net, is a really, really great resource to utilize. Completely free icons. You'll probably notice some of the example maps will have some on here. Some of our own template has a few from here. But these are really, really great to utilize. And what's really nice about them is if you just select one of them, you can customize it even further. So you can change the background color, foreground, here's the frame, foreground color, right? And now the background, you have different shapes. This is new and really awesome, these different shapes. Rotate it. And now here's the size. I think, I'm pretty sure your other icons, these are 32 by 32. Let's do a test. Oh, and here's also like the frame width. Let me make this bigger again. So when you're working on it, you can make it larger, but when you go to save it, we'll do 32, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, like here's frame width. I want to make this larger or smaller, or none at all. Really totally your preference. Everything that's been given to you in this class is just a template, right, to start with. As far as it goes, besides the character and basically the things in the ASPOR folder, feel free to modify and adjust anything given to you and make it your own and make it personal. Bless you. So once you're done, you have it how you want it. You can go ahead and hit download. It'll download it right there. And now let me just go ahead and then close that. should be able to drop this in here. Yeah, and that was, oh, I think it has, no, 32. No. 64? Am I crazy? But you can see how easy it is to add these in here, right? Okay, so it's some weird number in between. I don't know why. Should be a power of 2, but anyways, you can make your own in there, and feel free to add your own, and add a little text box of what it is. If you're adding new icons, add them to the legend itself, because I don't want to see new icons and not have any clue what I'm looking at. I still need to interpret this, or other people, not just me, right? You're going to be reviewing each other's work and eventually connecting these to each other, so you want to basically be selling yourselves and selling your map to your teammates. This is why you guys want to work with me. This is my map. I've already got a clear indication. And that's one way to actually leverage how to form teams, right, is how well your ideas are communicated. Collectibles, same thing. Here's just 3 examples, or 3 common ones you can use. Again, breadcrumbs doesn't actually mean a physical piece of bread or an actual crumb of bread. It's just a technique used to a type of collectible, right? So we got the hidden, the ones tied to progression, and then some breadcrumbs, leading the player to the objectives or teasing them, knowing that they can get to certain places. And if it's not your thing, you're like, man, I hate collecting objects in games. It's not for everybody, right? Not everyone enjoys that sense of games. I was like that for a long time, and it was really Crackdown that changed that for me. I loved getting those orbs and collecting those things, and that's the type of setups you want to be looking for, where every objective, every collectible are integrated to each other, and that you're using them as rewards for player actions. All right, so pretty straightforward. So the notes. All right, so again, these notes, this section here, you'll see these note numbers right here. These should be tied to your setup. So in these notes here, I want to see clear description of what the player's doing, right? What are the actions? What are the setups? And this is where a lot of the copy paste from the flow chart, taking what you've already written here, copy it from here, put it on your map, right? So it's a lot of just setting yourself up and moving forward. Same thing with your reference images here. You're going to need to also have those on your map final. So once you've done the work, it's in place, ready to go. So that's what I want to see in this section. If you want to have a little brief description at the top about something that's important that you want to explain or say, that's acceptable. But this point here, when I see these note numbers, I want them to match whatever the note is that's on the map itself. So don't use bullets. That's like a new thing I saw last month. Or don't use like A, B, C, D, and then have these numbers. That's just very confusing. Whatever note numbers here, have that note corresponding in this section here. All right, and now the collectibles. When you guys see this word, see the sentence, fill in setup here, what do you think that means? Because I want to see if this is just I feel like no one understands this. What do you think that means? Exactly, right? What do you need to do? What is the player's action to get that collectible? Exactly. That's what I want to see there. Don't just tell me collectible number 1, gas, collectible 2, cash, scrap metal, medicine. You can say the name of what the item is if you want to. You can go above and beyond and put a little symbol of the little icon in there as well. That'd be pretty cool. But the important thing is, what is the player doing, right? What is this used for? If it's a breadcrumb, say, this is a glowing piece of aluminum, and it's used to lead the player into the generator room or something like that. Just explain what it is. And this is partially for me so I can quickly see that, yes, you have your 15 collectibles without having to go through the map and count them all. But also this is beneficial for you, because if you get through all 15 and you look at your list and say, oh, wow, 10 of mine are move an object out of the way, and the other 5 of them are stack an object on stack some boxes and reach a platform, you basically have the same collectibles repeated over and over, right? So you want to push yourselves for variety and density and interaction, not just the same thing, fill in the blank. So this is the one thing where it's like, you know, you can do what the rubric says and follow the rubric to a T, or you can really think about what's going to make a fun, viable level. Because I've seen all kinds of stuff to where, you know, they've just got 15 collectible, like they got one room in their level and has 15 collectibles on the ground. And like, well, they're in my level. I have all 15. That's there, right? That's what you wanted to see. I'm like, no, there's pacing and there's, you know, thought and creativity that goes into that. I can't just tell you guys what exactly to do. You just have to come up with some of that on your own. So don't just follow the rubric. Think about what's going to give you a good level, not a good grade. All right, so the other requirements, so the collectibles, 15 is one of the requirements. The player start and player finish are required, so make sure you include those on the map. The player path as well. Let me see. Player start, 15 collectibles. Make sure it's shared. Hopefully you guys did that correctly. And you can definitely test it. You can have it me test it today in lecture, or sorry, in lab, to make sure that your brainstorming and LDD are shared properly. So player path is not in the requirements, but it definitely should be. So this is basically used to indicate to the player, to other users or readers, what the player is going to be doing and where they're going. So let's take a look at some examples so kind of give you a better indication of what's acceptable and what you want to try and stay away from. So let's start with this one. There's a few different ones down here. A lot of them have a lot of them have really good things about them that I'll point out, and some just minor things that if it were me, I would have done one or two things slightly different. So, most of these are on campus students. I can point out any online. This was an on campus student. So one thing I'm just going to say, first thing is he used the tool, which is Google Draw, very, very well. He definitely took what was given to him and did the best with it and made a very interesting map that you could see this in like a Prima strategy guide, right? You can visualize this as a final product that you would buy, almost like you'd use this to build it, and then if players wanted to basically, I'm stuck, I can't go forward, how do I beat this level? You can use this map to figure out how to beat it. So the one thing I will point out is take a look at his notes, as I mentioned, about it's that big block of text. So not the best way to do it, but it's very, very well written. A lot of information here. So definitely well done. You just could kind of organize it a little bit better. Maybe have it tied to, you know, a chunk of text with the reference image pointing at the area, or, you know, color code, things like that. But his actual building of the map is very, very well done. And while I'm here, I'll talk about the terrain itself. So you're going to be required to have terrain in your map. And the reason is because when you get to level design, you're actually going to be using the terrain, and they're going to be testing you on, you know, how well you're using the skills, right? Or using the terrain tool, the skills you've been taught or you will be learning. So it can be an outdoor, you can make an outdoor level. You can make it so the player is actually walking on the terrain. You can also make it that it's just the player looks out a window and sees the terrain. As long as it exists in your map and in your level and level design, you'll be good to go. And this is a really good way to represent it on a map if you are having trouble trying to visualize your ideas in terms of the terrain and like height, like depth and height. Creating these shapes using the line tool. Where is it? Line tool, curve. You know, creating different curves and shapes with this, and then duplicating it and making them darker or lighter colors really starts to sell that depth, right? Or those mounds of sand that he was trying to represent. So that's a really good way to actually represent it. Taking a look at his map itself, notice that the player path isn't just long stretches of walking, right? It's short, it's quickly broken up with some type of interaction. So over here, the player can move an object, get a collectible. Over here, they can kick some debris out of the way. First, get introduced to a tripwire. They look to the left and see the sandstorm that they can't get access to. Come over here. Now they use physics objects to throw objects at these crates and knock them down and do some platforming. Get a collectible, get rewarded for it. Hit this interaction that shuts off the sandstorm. He even went above and beyond and put this little piece of glass here. That very easily represents, this type of detail is helpful because now you can see, okay, the player's going to be sitting at this console with a window in front of them with the sandstorm. When they turn it off, they actually can see it happen. They know when they hit that switch, they know what was affected without needing like a cutscene and all this extra tech that's cool and all. But if you think logically about setting up your level in this type of way, that'll be much better, because I've definitely seen it before, and this may have been in his example, not too sure, but I've seen it tons of times where a slight difference, if I just take this console over here and move it to this side, right? Now it's on this side of the wall. I didn't move the whole console, but now it's over here, right? So now my back is faced to that window. When I hit the button, I have no clue what's going on. So a slight change like this makes a huge difference in terms of actual gameplay. It may seem minute, but it matters long term, and you want to be thinking about that type of stuff. All right. So moving forward, this is the one stretch of his map that I definitely didn't agree with, and it actually ended up changing when he got to level design. He ended up filling in so the sandstorm kind of blocked this whole part here, and then there was this little catwalk that you would basically jump up, move an object over, jump up, jump across a little gap, and then drop down on the other side of the sandstorm. And that was a huge difference, right? No scripting involved, basically just placing objects in logically thought out ways to give the player something to do rather than just walk. Because it was literally you get to this point and you walk from point A to point B and it's just nothing happening. And you want to really avoid this. Like, in all honesty, this isn't going to be fun. This isn't going to be compelling. You can say, yes, I made a level and it exists, but is it enjoyable? Is it actually something that you want to play or you want to give to other people and see their reactions? Because this type of stuff here where it's just long stretches, people are either going to get confused or think they're missing something, or just it feels incomplete. So this type of density down here, stuff like this is what you want to be striving for. And again, like I said, he ended up changing this. This is just coming out of my class. This is where his map was, and really good final design with definitely some improvements. But that's what's awesome, and it's the double-edged sword of design. It's never done. Same thing that goes with art. Anyone ever tried to do anything artistically? It's like it's never quite finished. You always can make it better, but it's got to be to a point where you're happy with it. So another really cool thing that this student did was he took the icon and barrier, or the barrier and solution icons, and he just changed the color of them right inside of, so you can go to image options and adjust basically the different coloring of the icon itself. Really, really cool way to basically represent, all right, here's the blue solution for the blue barrier. It's just a visual indication that really helps. Another thing that the student did really well was the different usage of the player path. He just made a slight adjustment, making the primary one blue, and then the optional one is the gray one here, the white one. So really different little adjustments like that, feel free to go forward with. This room in particular I'll talk about because this ties definitely to me, just looking at it, it ties in a lot to the one room, one item to collect, which you'll see on common mistakes. So you want to avoid just basically walking into a room, collecting an item, and leaving. Right? Well, when was the last time you left your wallet in your room? You walk into your room, get the wallet, and you're just like, oh man, that was awesome, right? No, that doesn't happen. So give the player, if you're going to have a room or a space for a collectible, really use that for a purpose. Even though having a drawer for them to pull out, having them slide an object over, having them knock off a shelf and debris falls, anything at all, right? Like a really good rule of thumb that Mr. Gazaway gives to his students is, if you guys have like 20 minutes before the due date and you have just this empty stretch of nothing going on, just put something there in the way. Make the player jump, make the player crouch, make them use the grab-and-all, something. If you have something there, it's much more compelling than just walk into a room, get an item, which this is what this room tended to be. And if you look at the blue path, I can literally just take this blue path and skip, you know, four or five of these rooms. So what's the purpose, right? So really think about, is there a better way I can structure this to give players the maximum amount of content and avoid this repetitive break the wall, find a thing, break the wall, find a thing, break the wall, find a thing. How can I innovate on that and make it more progressive than just repetitive? All right, so another really cool addition he made, and this was after our critiques. So this was partially a student suggestion, partially ideas that we were bouncing back and forth. Was so basically the whole premise of this level is you get to this crane, you see that it's blocked, right? But this control panel's off. It's missing a fuse. You need to find the fuse first and then move the panel. So he had the player come over here, do a thing, come around, come in here, and then he had this room right here, this large room, over here, all the way over here where this picture is. So it's complete opposite side of the map. And he basically wanted you to walk over, hit the button, and then backtrack through the entire level to get back to the crane. And my suggestion, or a few of our suggestion, was why not prevent that from happening and logically place this building in a way to where as soon as you find this fuse, which was hit this on and turn this on and it powers on, find this fuse and this powers on this control panel, here's this window. The player can just smash through this window, jump down a mound of debris, and climb back down to the crane. So you're looping them all the way back around, right? You start here, come all the way around, and end up right back at the same point. Rather than come over here, get the thing, and now backtrack through it, you can make it feel linear, but you're always seeing new content, but it's always basically ending up in the same location or back to where you started. So really, really good, just quality map here. So real quickly, I'll take a look at a few more. That. All right, so this is another on-campus student, Tyler, if anyone knows him, really good guy. And on a lot of these, you'll notice that there's turrets on these still, and you'll notice in the example level that you guys play for your ILA assignment that there's turrets in there. You guys don't have access to turrets anymore, and that's actually a really good thing because how they're used and just how they function is not great. They have a lot of problems with them, and they're very easy to avoid. And they're almost just like a design crutch. So we've seen it in level design already that without them, we've seen much better results. You guys are coming up with a lot more creative and interactive setups, and you're building them on your own rather than just falling back on, oh, this room's empty, let me put a turret, and now it's fun, right? It's not the case. So you'll see them, and you can even test them out. Like you'll see that, wow, these things are a joke. And that's partially, I mean, for a few different reasons, they are the way they are right now. So this map, a few things he did really well was take a look at his notes to where it is broken up as well as color-coded with images attached. Just the level of detail that went into this, or just a level of quality, is really, really nice. And the map itself, you'll see, is not very like visually dense with a lot of stuff. It's really just focused on these are the interactions, this is where the player's going, and then he took the time to fill in the visual detail later on. So just the amount of density in this map is really, really what you guys want to be striving for, and overall the silhouette as well. So let me do a search. Because that's another thing we run into a lot is students will take a map or just a rectangle, right? Like the map template itself is a rectangle, right? So they'll just take everything and say this is the map template, and I just take a rectangle, right? So here's my map, and now they just start to build everything in here. Right, so this is my map, and I just start to put the player start and build everything right in here. Right, and then you end up with this map that's just a square or a rectangle. What you want to do is basically create something more unique. So if you look at it, find it. Second. So if you look at it like this with just a black background, and if I were to turn it all white, you notice that it's basically a much more interesting and unique silhouette than just a square, right? A lot of cool shapes going on here. Got some curves and some arcs. So remember, you can take a look at some of the level blocking meshes and the shapes you can create there, and think about how you can apply those into actual 2D space first and create something unique rather than just a bunch of rectangles connected to each other. Definitely his custom icons definitely took some time to create some unique icons. So overall, the density is what I really like about this map. Is we want to stick to the 10-second rule, right? So don't let the player walk for long stretches without doing anything. So he definitely did a good job with that. So definitely pay attention to the density on maps like this one. Right. So here is a good example of, this is a student that did a really good job, and this is to anyone that wants to do a level with multiple floors, so multiple floors of a building or just any type of verticality to it. I'll go over to this stuff first because he did a really good job, and this was all from his, this is all part of, none of this was there for the rough, which of course you want this information, but this is all information he got from the feedback and the critique that really helps his map in the long term. So this is a side view. If you were to look at his map built in Unity from the side, this is what you'd see, and it's all color-coded over here. And this is basically the overlay and the silhouette is what's really important, is because you want to make sure if these are all stacked on top of each other and you go to build this, what is it going to look like and how is it going to actually be represented? So this is really important information to have. Now over here, though, this is where it's actually built and constructed, right? So this is all the first floor, and now this piece here was like, this is like a missile silo, like here's an image of like you're basically going to different floors of this missile launch, and here's that same, this is all the same image and it's all stacked on top of each other, but you want it all pulled out and separate from itself when you're actually looking at the map. But you know, in Unity, it's going to overall be built like this and look like this from the side view. So really, really good, again, a good attention to detail and good just overall construction, as well as really good density, a lot of good interactions in a short, dense space, and that's going to be overall better for you guys to be focusing on, because you know, anyone that's been, you know, I'm sure you can tell this with the visuals and setting, or anyone that's been like done modeling or done world building in Unity, the bigger the space you have, the larger the area, just the more time it takes to make it populated with assets and textures and make it look like it's a real, like a place that could actually exist. So start with a smaller space, and then you can add a lot more detail and density to it rather than just a big empty area that's incomplete. All right, and then the last example we've got here. Now one thing to pay attention to this one, I definitely want to reiterate this, is this was done by a team of 3 students. This was back when you guys had basically 1 week to learn Perforce as a team and make a map, a second week to build the whole map in Unity, get it all functioning. The third week was polish it and give the player communication. And then the fourth week was add visuals and art and sound effects. So you had a whole month to do everything I just described and what you guys now do in 3 months. So this was an intense process. one of the hardest classes at Full Sail. But this was done by 3 students. That's the point I want to make, was this isn't one student's area, because this would be way too much. Each one of these are very, very well done. I just wanted to make a, show you guys this one right here, because overall, and this is back when before we had different requirements. Now that you guys have more time to work on the map, and that was the one thing we felt was the flaw with this process, was if your map wasn't great, it was like, okay, oh well, go build it anyways. But now you guys have time to actually revise your map and get feedback from each other and make it better before you commit to a design. So just take a look at his just detail in the map, right? Again, something you could see in a strategy guide or something you could see as a professional entity, right? So really, really cool in terms of density. He's got these little debris piles. Really just visually you can see what this level will look like in the long term. Even pay attention to how it's constructed. Like these little, basically these little wall pieces, and even that little like rivet right there, how it's like beveled on the edge. Here's little chunks of, this is where glass, this is a wall, and then here's a glass panel or a glass window. This is going to be helpful when you actually build this inside of Unity, right? So don't just make a rectangle and slap it in and call it a room, because how are you going to actually build that, right? Think about using the level blocking meshes or using the Unity objects or objects that we have provided to you. How are you going to actually build this? And if the more information you put in here, it's going to make it much easier for you, and you can just bang out your level much faster if you have a clear plan. Also, stuff like that really ties in well to just thinking about what the player is going to be seeing. And I can tell that he was, seeing like, okay, he's going to come down this hallway, and if he looks to the left, he'll see these satellites, which he's going to interact with eventually. So it's almost foreshadowing and kind of leading the player to their next objective. So I can tell that that type of thought goes in when I see that amount of detail. Even you'll notice that these cameras, which again, that looks like an icon from GameIcons.net, you see how it has that red border, and here's this red barrier. So if you get detected by this camera, it shuts this barrier. And same thing like that. They're all corresponding. Pink with pink, blue with blue, green with green. Here's the green turret. Things like if you get saw by the turret, you get shot. If you get seen by the camera, you get shot by the turret. And this is still like a setup like that is still things you guys could totally do, right? But rather than a turret, it shoots, a fire burst at you, or shoots an arrow out of the wall, or some type of booby trap that was there. Really anything, a trap door opens or something. Really anything that could be replaced. It was just these are very poorly done turret for third person. So another good map. And again, another thing that this team did, but you would still need to do if we're an individual and wanted to do multiple floors, was take a look at this overall layout. Really cool, just kind of describing everything that's going on and breaking it into chunks. All right, and the only other thing, this isn't like a showstopper, like it's make or break, but think about the fact that you're going to be connecting these to other students' areas. So you want to avoid like having your let me go to, you want to avoid having your player start or finish like in the dead center of your map, right? Like if his was very well done because it was very easy to, and his ended up being the last level, but he basically had the sand down here. This is where I'm going to connect my area. So it could come in from over here, it could come in from over here, it could straight ahead. But you want to avoid like, oh, my player starts right here, right in the middle, because then you can't physically connect that to something else in Unity, right? You can't attach it somewhere. Or same thing with the ending. And also if you have your having your starting and ending point too close together to the exact same spot, this is probably as far as I'd recommend going, and definitely they're segmented and different. If you have them on the exact same spot, it's tough because then you'll have basically, you have to connect to something and then lead to something else. So it's almost like you'll be in a three-way, you're trying to get like a three-way connection going in one place, and you won't have enough space. So still have like this, just an area that you're going to be flexible, that you're going to adapt and connect to another area eventually in level design. So any questions at all about the map? No? Any questions at all from the online guys? I saw that Alfred, you posted a few. You said, so we don't need them anymore. I'm not sure what you're referring to. And if you want to use a microphone, you guys can feel free. Yeah, so definitely the turrets. Yeah, the turrets you're not using anymore. So feel free to design something on your own or come up with something slightly, just definitely come up with something better, but still something that's interactive and, basically think of what the turrets were representing, right? Some type of obstacle or barrier that the player either needed to avoid or deal with before they could move forward. Like a very common one we see was like the player has to deactivate a force field and then it turns off the turret. Well, what's the point of the turret when it's just doing the same thing as the force field anyways, right? So just think about other things to replace those with, and you'll end up with a much better level in the long run. So definitely refer back to this document if you guys haven't read through it already. This is definitely the time you want to before you start working on the map, and avoid long, empty, boring spaces like that, and focus on that density that we've been talking about. So believable versus not realistic. So this is a really good concept to understand the difference between, and definitely take a look at this video to get a really good indication. But you really want to be paying attention to, don't worry too much about reality, right? This is a video game. We can express ourselves a little bit more and bend reality a bit, but we still want it to be believable. A really good example is like a floating platform. We're not making Mario here. We don't want to just have a platform floating in space. Think about, if this was in the real world, or if we wanted to get creative with it, how would this thing be suspended? Maybe it has like a rail that it's on, or maybe even having a little particle effect that's like a little jet propulsion. It's being, there's some type of force that's making it hover. Something like that is much better than just a platform just floating in space. So that's the type of things we want to be shooting for, is believable, not necessarily realistic. Another thing to think about with realistic is most of the time things in regular life are boring and ordinary, right? Like the desks, I made the example last class, I'm pretty sure, where everything is completely lined up perfectly, right? If you go into a room, you'll see like bookshelves against the wall and very organized, and it's made that way because it's supposed to be easy and convenient, right? But we're not making it easy and convenient for players. We want it to be challenging and exciting. So things are knocked over, things are turned and adjusted, and it's crazy and chaotic rather than rigid, just like ordinary life. One student I had a few months ago is a really great example of this. He was working on his level, and he had an image of a layout of a control room he wanted to make. And you could tell everything was very much just basically looked like copy and pasted over and over again, and things were very much laid out to where the player could go in the room and go anywhere, right? There was no path laid out. There was no plan in place. So my suggestion was, rotate some of these things, knock them over, actually form a path for the player to take. And then he says to me, he goes, well, I can't do that because they're all bolted to the ground. So I was like, well, it's not real life, like you need to separate that. It's not necessarily realistic. I'm like, okay, if they're bolted to the ground, have a wrench laying down there, and maybe someone unbolted them and created a fort, right? So it don't have to be that literal. As long as it's explained. One guy said to me, can I have a massive marshmallow in my level? And I'm like, sure, if you can explain where it came from or why it's there, and if it fits in the world, go for it. Maybe there's some marshmallow factory that had some freak accident and made some giant marshmallow. I'm cool with it if you can explain it, right? It may not be realistic, but if it's believable, I'm good to go with it. And most of us are. You know, the level design instructors and Mr. Gazaway will be totally on board with it as long as you can support it and it doesn't contradict anything within the creative vision, of course. Alrighty, so that being said, what I want to do for you guys is just show you, I'll show you a short video. This is one of my favorites, and then I'll let you guys go a little early for lunch. Oh, 1 second. All right, so this was a student's area after Des 3.
This is the walkthrough for my level, junkyard. That is the first level, and when the player approaches the outside of my level, they are greeted with a wall, and there's a breach in the wall, and that's how they get in. This is very linear, and the object for the player here is to collect these batteries, there's 10 of them, and use them to activate objects in the level that need to be powered, and that will allow them to progress further. The first obstacle they're going to come into is a series of movement obstacles, these walls here. They need to use their grapnel to knock down these cars, and once they do that, they can get around up on top, and then they'll see a battery on top of this container, as well as a couple of pickups, cash pickups. And they will move forward. And this blue card here, the color blue is my indicator that this is where you need to go. It's not really explicitly told to the player, but hopefully they'll pick up on the color blue as a key to moving forward. They have to make a jump from the container to the car, and once they get through that, that's a small objective that they complete. The next challenge is to get under through here. They got to crouch to pick up their third battery, and that's a checkpoint. And then they come out into an open area that has a bulldozer, a acid pond, and a gate. And they can try to turn on the bulldozer. And it'll say you need 4 batteries to start this bulldozer. They have 3 at this point. To get the battery in the middle of the acid pond, they have to clear the grate here with their grapnel. And once they do that, the pond quickly drains. This acid pond will burn the player. A little demonstration there. And once they get to the battery, they can turn on the bulldozer. And the bulldozer will smash through the gate and then break. First time. If the player explores around further, there's a cubby back here. I don't remember. I didn't put any pickups there. There's also a cubby back here. I did put some pickups back here. There's a cash pickup right here and right here. So once they activate the bulldozer and they get up to the second tier, that's a checkpoint. And the next objective is to unblock the shed door. If they hit E outside, the door is blocked. They have to get up on top of the roof and gain entry from the roof. Once they grab the battery, the light will turn on. And again, use the grapnel to unblock the door. All right, and the next objective is to knock down this pole. Again, it is marked by blue rings to indicate that it is something that you use. You push it down and it makes a little bridge for this clip battery. Once they have both batteries from the shed and the clip, they can turn on the melt plant. If they don't have those, it'll say the exact same thing that both those are set. It'll say that you need X number of batteries to turn on this plant. And once they open the plant, they can hop across the hot lava, which will burn them quickly. And they fall down into this area, and this is kind of a one-way point in the map where they can't go back. This door is jammed sideways, it doesn't work. So the only thing they really can do is grab this battery. And that was powering a temperature regulator. And it says meltdown imminent. Everything's starting to break down, blow up. Steam blows open the door, and they have to get away from the plant. Explosion in 10 seconds, get away. Hopefully they come over here or jump off or run away, whatever they got to do. If they stay too close, it will kill them. And it'll take them back to where the bulldozer is, as where the last checkpoint is. And if they get away, they will see that this gate has been blown off. And now they can access the third tier, which has a crane and three more batteries. The first battery here closest to them is on top of a mound of rubble, and to get it you have to do some platforming. And I was like crouching. You can carefully climb up here. Boom. All right. And once you're up there on top, you kind of have a bird's eye view of the turret here. And there's a battery power on the turret. Once you get to it, you grab the battery and the turret will turn off. The turret's dead now, and now you have enough batteries to power the crane. Once the crane is powered, it will turn and grab this car. And you can go under it. There's a pickup under these stairs. Oh, I missed it. Oh well. The last battery here is on top of the security building. And you get to the nice view, the whole level from here. Once you grab this last battery, you can grab the zip line and exit out of the level. And this puts you on the outside of the level and on a path to the next level. And this is the end of Junkyard. And the next level is beyond down this elevator here. And that's it.
All right, so a lot of good stuff going on in that video. I really like just his overall density and usage of a lot of the different mechanics, the acid pool, just the usage of getting those batteries I think was really well done. Now here is his map. I'll show you the video first, and now I'll take a look at his map that he had built. And you can tell that now that you've seen how it ended up, a lot of that is basically right here laid out for us, right? So the player starts down here. Here they knock over that car, go across here. He used to have a box there so the player could push it over, but I think he wanted to make the player do that jump, do that long jump, crouch underneath here. We get to here, now here's that acid pond, and here's that crane, or that the bulldozer. You get that thing. Here's even his two secrets that he had planned for. Smash the bulldozer, rinse, repeat. Here's that power plant, go through, here's the crane. So here you can see this was the plan that he had designed in here, and that's what he ended up with. And I think that yes, there was probably, we could talk about his level, and there's things he could visually change or things he could improve even further, but overall he had a really good final result, and overall just the quality even from here, from design to level design all the way into actual full implementation with the team, he ended up with a really good product. So hopefully that inspired you guys and gets you thinking about going forward. And the last thing I'll leave you guys with is in the IND content folder, you'll see this Team Kale example gold. This is the one I want you guys to be playing for the example level discussion. Same thing goes for the online students as well. This one here, this example goal, this is a first person, still a really good level, a lot of really cool setups, really cool featured assets in that level. If you want to play through it as well, feel free. But this is just an older using the first person controller. This Team Kale one down here, this was from an on-campus team that used a third person controller, still turrets in there, but a lot of good setups as well. But again, this example goal was made in 1 month. So if you want to get a really inspired and see what was possible in 1 month, take a look at this and it'll really blow you away. So let's see, any other questions at all? I think I covered everything I need to cover for today. So if you finish your LDD or you're just finishing up, you're looking good and you're on track. If not, you're still in good shape. Just make sure that you start to work on your map and get your ideas down. In the next class on Wednesday, I'm going to be walking through the ILA number 6, I'm pretty sure. It's the rigid body, no, not rigid bodies, the wind turbine experiments. So I'm going to be doing a live demonstration of those on Wednesday, and that'll help you do your entryway assignment. So after that, it's really about focusing on the map for the next few classes. So really make sure that you get all of your ideas down, and if you have any questions or want any feedback on your LDD, feel free to come up to me in lab, or if you're online, feel free to reach out to me on Skype or FSO, email, and I'll give you some feedback, because that's definitely want to make sure you have a good design before you move too far into the flowchart and map portion. So we have the room till 11 o'clock.